Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. So I'd like to welcome you to, I think this is either week 9 or week 10. MashaAllah. Last week I had to abruptly cancel the class, so I do apologize for any inconvenience, mashallah. And the week before that, we had the African American Islamic Conference Summit, African American Islamic Summit. And then the week before that, we had reviewed the test. So we will just resume the class. And just as a refresher, inshallah, we're going to read the text right up until the point we are now. We left off on line 37. So I don't know if either one of you want to do the honors, inshallah, read from the beginning of the text up until line 37. If not, then I'll take the money off the table.
I'll do it.
Okay, alhamdulillah, may Allah reward you.
Start with line 1.
Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Author begins, was translated as, all praises for Allah, for his blessings and his peace and blessings be upon a prophet who came with divine unity, who came with this message when religion had lost the divine unity. He guided creation to the true religion with a sword and guiding to the truth. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final messenger of his Lord, and his family, companions, and followers. To proceed, knowledge of the fundamentals of religion is personally obligatory and requires exposition. However, due to the length of the large works of this science, people's resolve has weakened. In this poem I have called The Precious Jewel of Divine Oneness, and I have refined it. It is Allah whose acceptance I seek, and for him to make it beneficial to anyone who is avid for reward. It is legally obligatory on everyone morally responsible to know what is necessary for Allah and the possible and impossible, and the like of this for Allah's messengers. So listen up. Because anyone who bases their faith on mere following, their faith is not bereft of doubt. Some theologians have even mentioned a difference of opinion regarding their belief, while others confirmed and clarified this, saying, if they are firm in their belief, this is sufficient. Otherwise, they remain in harm. And know well, with no doubt, that the first of all obligations is to know Allah. And regarding this, there is disagreement on the details. So contemplate about your very self, then about the higher and lower worlds. You will find therein creation of marvel and wisdom. Within it is proof of its non-existence. Anything for which non-existence is possible cannot possibly be eternal. And faith is explained as being confirmation, and there is difference of opinion about pronouncing it. It is said to be a condition, that pronouncing a statement of faith, or to be a condition along with works, while others affirm that it is an essential element. One's Islam is manifest through one's works, such as Hajj, prayer, fasting, and zakat. So understand, the increasing of faith is affirmed, and it increases through all acts of obedience. And faith is lessened by lessening one's acts of obedience, though others disagreed. Yet others reportedly denied disagreement on this. Being is necessary for him. Beginninglessness and likewise endlessness is unaffected by non-being. And he is distinct from all things given to non-being. The proof of this is the proof of the beginninglessness. His self-subsistence and oneness transcendent are his noble attributes. Allah is transcendent beyond having an opposite or another like Allah, partner, or having a father or a son or friends. Power and will are distinct from his command, and knowledge and good pleasure, as has been confirmed. And his knowledge and it is not said that it is acquired. So follow the way of truth and leave doubts. His life and likewise his speech and hearing, as has been established by transmission. Does he have cognition or not? There is difference of opinion, and they, scholars, have affirmed we neither affirm nor negate it and its cognition. Living, hearing, powerful, willing, hearing what he wills is. And speaking, the essential attributes are neither other than the entity nor the entity itself. So power relates to all things possible. Power relates to all possible things without any limits to that which it relates to. That was 33.
I'm sorry, what line are we on? Sorry,
That was line 33.
Okay.
Yeah, well, salam. Yeah, read up to 37. That's where we left off.
Okay. So affirm oneness for the power of Allah, and likewise for his will and knowledge, though the latter is wider in what it relates to. And what it relates to, for it relates to the necessary and impossible as well. Allah's speech also relates to the necessary, possible, and impossible. So let us follow. And the hearing and seeing of Allah relates to everything existent, and likewise discernment if affirmed. And hearing and seeing are different from knowledge. As for life, it does not relate to anything.
Okay, mashallah. Alhamdulillah. So we see, am I still on? Oh, yeah. So we see from the book so far, as the author, Imam al-Laqqani, he titled it Jawhar at-Tawhid, the precious jewels of divine oneness. And from the lines we covered so far, he gave us an introduction, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending blessings on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then telling us the purpose of the book, which is to bring back this idea of, concentrating on Tawhid. And although, we in these times, Tawhid is somewhat, people may put it in a simplistic form, but the details about knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very intricate, and that the one who must know it, once they reach a certain age of mukallaf, they have to know what is necessary, what is possible, and what is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So far, he has been covering the necessary for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when we talk about Allah's essence, there are three categories that we talk about. That Allah is absolutely one in which three categories. So this is a quick trivia.
In his essence, his attributes, and his actions.
Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is one in his that, his essence, his sifat, his attributes, and his af'al, his actions. So that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely unique in those with those characteristics and those traits, and the necessary attributes give this total complete transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is called tanzih. We'll go back and review the book, but I want to start from where we left off. Are there any questions thus far?
No.
I remember
no. Where Issa was reading from, was that a different translation?
Yeah, I was about to ask him, which translation is that, Brother Issa? I like that one.
I believe you sent it to me.
That's the one I sent you?
That's what I believe.
And that's not the well, maybe I had a couple of them, but the one I was using in my class, and when I took this class, it's not the same one, but I like that one. We'll talk about it offline, but yeah, I like that one.
It says translation is provided based upon Sheikh Faraz Rabbani's lessons on the text at the Sunni Path Academy.
Oh, I sent you that one?
Maybe I might be mistaken. I thought you did.
No, yeah, because I got the one that was translated by Sheikh Harun Hanif. That's who I took this class with. Okay, well, huh?
Can you resend that one to me?
Yeah, absolutely. Inshallah, I will. Okay, so we discussed the necessary attributes, and They are also in three categories. Well, four categories actually. One is in the category by itself, and then there are five that are in another category. Then there what's that? Then six in another. That's seven and six. I'll get my numbers. I'm gonna get my math messed up. All right. But anyway, the first category of these attributes, these necessary attributes, first of all, how many are there?
13.
Okay. And when we say necessary attributes, do we exclude any of the other names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
No.
Okay. So what are we saying that when we say necessary attributes, that these attributes for Allah, we say that they're necessary, meaning what?
These are the ones that we should know.
Yeah, these are ones that we should know, but why should we know these particular ones as opposed to any other ones?
Because they confirm Allah's existence. And it's the
So basically, these
absence of them are.
Go ahead.
Now I was going to go and say the statement that the absence of them are inconceivable. No, yeah, the essence of them are necessary, and the absence of them are the opposite of them are inconceivable.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it or no?
Yeah, that's it. So these 13 attributes or 20 attributes are basically what make Allah who He is, why He's unique, because He possesses these attributes in the absolute sense. And the first one being that before anything else, even before we establish His oneness, we establish that He exists, right? And which attribute is that?
Al-Wajud.
Yeah, al-Wajud, yeah. Al-Mawjud, that Allah exists, excuse me. Mawjud, that Allah is existing. And then He has the other attributes, the Sifatu Salbiya. What is Sifatu Salbiya?
Those that negate any imperfections.
Yeah, those attributes that negate any imperfections for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we have the other 7 attributes. So 1. Then we got 6. Yeah, we got 6 that are the Sifat Salbiya, right? Then we got 7 that are Sifat al-Ma'ani. What is Sifat al-Ma'ani?
Those qualitative, those that affirm attributes of perfection for them.
Yeah, those ones that affirm attributes of perfection, Sifat al-Ma'ani. And then we have the Sifat al-Ma'nawiyya. What is the Ma'nawiyya?
Active form of those attributes of perfection.
Yeah. So in other words, when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is attributed with irada, which is one of His Sifat al-Ma'ani, then that means that He is murid, that He is willing. He has the eternal attribute of divine will, and so that means that He is willing. So that's the meaning of Sifat al-Ma'nawiyya. All right, so as I told you all before, after we finish this one, we're going to cover the attributes in detail and their opposites, inshallah. And in detail, meaning that we know them by heart. We probably know them already, but just to go and just specifically in those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, so let me get my stuff here together. Any questions? How's everybody doing?
Alhamdulillah.
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 How's everybody health, wealth, knowledge of self?
Alhamdulillah.
Yes,
Everybody's good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to cover the text, just reading, to get us back in the groove, inshallah. Okay, now let me see. Hold on. All right, let me get this. Get my ducks in a row. All right, so we left off at line 38. So we'll go to line 39, inshallah. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we read line 39. And so it says, واختيار أن اسماه توقيفية كذا صفات فاحفظ السمعية. So it says that the chosen opinion is that his names are divinely established as well as his attributes. So memorize that which has been transmitted. All right, so we'll go from there, inshallah. So we'll go up to line 42 today because the next line after this has a little detail that we're going to discuss. All right. So it says the chosen opinion is that his names are divinely established as well as his attributes. So memorize that which is transmitted. So let's discuss the meaning of that, inshallah. So divinely established, here use the word tawqifiyya. All right. What word do you hear in there? Tawqifiyya.
Tawfiq.
Tawfiq. Yeah, or something successful. So divine established, which means it is not permissible. I got some spelling errors there. I'm sorry. It is not permissible for anyone to assert an attribute or name for Allah unless there's an explicit text from the Quran or Sahih or Hasan Hadith or scholarly consensus, ijma'. So what that means is that we just don't call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by any names, and all of the names and attributes that we have for Allah, they have been divinely established, either directly from the Quran or what the Prophet ﷺ has said or what the scholars have agreed upon. All right. So, we don't call Allah names that are unbefitting for him. We don't say like his father time and stuff like that, or we don't say any names that attribute any kind of imperfection for Allah. All right, so now, even with that, there's a scholarly argument, there's ikhtilaf about using the names that are not divinely established as long as they don't indicate imperfection. So there are so many names that have already been, transmitted to us that we don't have to go there, so we don't use names that are not found. And also, we don't, how other people, we don't call Allah like, a divine force or his nature or energy or anything like that. All of those are imperfection because those things have a contingent or something. They're muhtath, they have a beginning. So we don't attribute those kind of names. And the scholarly argument saying that, you can use names as long as they're not, but it's a minority view. I mean, it's just an argument the scholars discuss, but the safest way is to go with what is already made consensus on, is that, the names that we already have is plenty, inshallah. All right. And, and just imagine, how people say in other faiths, the man upstairs and, that kind of stuff, So we definitely don't use any of those kind of things, And so here, his names and attributes are only known through revelation, and the ones that are rationally attributed to him are just qualifiers of his pre-eternal names and attributes. So this is when we talk about these sifat ma'ani, these are qualifiers of his names. Also we don't know the real detail of any of Allah's names, but what's conveyed to us gives us a better meaning and understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, And although we can never really know Allah in any reality, we just know and recognize by what he has shown us in creation and how and what he has established by his names and attributes. All right. So any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right, so that's basically for that line. All right. Let's go to the next line. So line 40, inshallah. So line 40 says, وَكُلُّ نَفْسٍ أَوْ حَمَّ تَشْبِيهَ أَوْ وَلْهُ أَوْ فَوِّدْ وَرَمْ تَنْزِيهَ. He said that any text that implies similitude or likeness, interpret it or entrust it that its knowledge is to Allah, but seek complete transcendence. Seek complete transcendence. All right, so we'll go into this one, inshallah. All right, so the first thing we want to discuss is there are two types of verses. Who wants to take a guess at the two types of verses? There are two types of verses in the Quran.
Is it ones that were revealed in Mecca and Medina? Or
No,
no?
no, not
That's
that.
not what you mean? Okay.
That's not what I mean.
Well, I'm forgetting the Arabic words, but it's those that are clearly established. They don't bear. They can only bear one meaning, and those that can bear more than one meaning.
Right, alhamdulillah. Yeah, that's good job. So we talk about the two types of verses are the muhkamat and the mutashabihat. So the first one we're talking about is the muhkamat, or the unambiguous verses, or verses that are clear in meaning. They only can be interpreted in one way and can be understood by itself. And the example is when we hear about fasting in Ramadan, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, kutiba alaykum siyamu, kama kutiba ala ladina min qablikum, la'alakum tattaqun. Fasting is prescribed for you, and then the next verse after that, it says the month of Ramadan is when the Quran was revealed, and so observe the fast in that month. So it doesn't take any kind of, real hard cognitive thinking to know that we fast in Ramadan. You don't have to go through any kind of, any processes to figure that out, right? So that's the meaning of unambiguous verses or clear verses. You don't have to think too deep about the meaning. Allah says He's one. That's easy to know. If Allah says the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not the father of any of you men, but he is the messenger of Allah and seal of the prophets, that's nothing to, you don't have to figure it out. And so the next kind is the mutashabihat. And so the ambiguous verses, or verses that are not clear. And when we say not clear, it shouldn't be understood that they're confusing. They're just not clear in the context and everything that you can just say that this is what it means. So they are not clear in meaning. They can be interpreted more than one way, and they cannot be understood except by references by other verses. An example is Allah's istiwa over the throne. And all of those verses that denote these kind of things that may give imperfection for Allah. Like we use the word yad and ayn and wajh, and this is where we'll see the people of the other persuasion where they get it wrong, because they do not they give these mutashabihat verses one meaning or interpret in one way, and that's the literal way. I actually had a conversation a couple years ago with it was a so-called student of knowledge, or someone that those people see as someone knowledgeable, and we were talking about and I think I mentioned this before, that he said that Allah possesses a soul. This man said Allah possesses a soul, wa yada billah. Right? So when I asked him what did he mean by that? Because possession, even in English, possession means you have something in your hand, right? Or you have something under your ownership. So I asked him, I said, well, let me ask you this verse, because he mentioned a verse about, and I can't remember the verse offhand, but where Allah says He breathed the spirit into Isa min ruhihi, right? And min ruhihi is what's called in Arabic idafa, from His spirit, right? So I asked him, well, what kind of verse is that? Is it muhkamat or mutashabihat? Right? And this person said, I don't know if he was like trolling me or whatever, but he said he didn't know. He said he didn't know. And I don't know if he was trying to see what kind of response, but this, what he did was interpret this verse in a literal meaning, or one meaning, which would make it a muhkamat verse. But all of those verses that deal with these attributes about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about istiwa and yad, which is translated as hand, and ayn translated as eye, and all of those things, all of them are mutashabihat. So here the meaning that they can have more than one meaning. And because they have more than one meaning, you just can't assign one meaning to it, right? So that's the difference from the mutashabihat verses. And so we'll discuss that and as we go in a couple of next slides. All right. Is that clear?
Very. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the mutashabihat verses, and of course, scholars have already classified these. So anybody that's worked their weight in, any kind of knowledge, even a so-called student knowledge, is supposed to know the difference, All right. So when he said that, I was at that point, I was like, yeah, in my mind, I was saying something else. I didn't say to him, like, it was like really not even worth continuing the conversation, All right. All right. Any questions on that?
No.
No.
Okay. So now in line 40, he talks about ta'wil and tafweed. This is, you guys probably know that. I know Brother Easton knows, and Wifey knows, and our sister Naila, I'm sure you know as well. But we'll just go for discussion. So the ambiguous verses. Now we talk about the two types of verses, the muhkamat and mutashabihat. Now when it comes to the ambiguous verses, because this is where people go astray at. In the mutashabihat verses, there are two approaches which would have one goal. All right. So that's what he's talking about in this verse. So the first one is ta'wil. And ta'wil literally means like interpretation, or more technical meaning is to move an expression away from its literal meaning to another meaning that is suitable to the divine. And how do you do that? By affirming what Allah has affirmed and negating what Allah has negated and removing any similitude between the creator and the creation. So one of the things here that maybe we should mention is that many times the people who don't like to use ta'wil and they say that it's not allowed, they absolutely say it's not allowed, particularly, people of the Wahhabi persuasion, they say that ta'wil is not allowed. And except when they have to use it, except when they have.
I was going to ask, why do they say that ta'wil is not allowed?
Because they are saying that they give the impression that ta'wil is like a person giving their own interpretation of the Quran without a precedent. But that's not ta'wil means. Here we have the meanings that a ta'wil is made after you already affirmed what Allah has affirmed and negated what Allah has negated. But it becomes to a situation where you have a mutashabihat verse that is not clear or is ambiguous or vague meaning that is not really clear, then you have to do one of these two approaches. So ta'wil becomes a necessity in certain instances, right? And we'll continue that discussion. But sometimes they give the impression that ta'wil is like somebody's like coming out the side of their neck with a meaning. And that's not what scholars do when they do ta'wil. It's not like, I think that means this. No, it's already interpretation based on what's already been established. But as you see, and we'll discuss it a little bit because there's a video I want to play for you all, a short video, why ta'wil is necessary. Because in some of those Wahhabi books, they tell you that with the attributes of Allah, that they believe in it without takyif, without howness, without tashbih, without likeness, without ta'wil, without interpretation, without tamthil or similitude, and without ta'til or denial. But in their interpretation of these mutashabihat verses, they actually do the opposite, because the one thing they do is they make these mutashabihat verses literal. And you've already seen some of these things where they say, that Allah says he's above the throne, and they believe that above the throne means like in a place and a location, because they're saying the words as they come in the Quran are real and literal, and we accept them as that. And that's different from what we say, which we say we accept the word in the Quran and the Hadith authentically reported, and what they mean when it comes to these respective verses, we leave to Allah. But when it comes to making a correct interpretation so that a wrong one won't be made, then we use this tool of ta'wil. All right, is that clear?
Yes, and it's ta'wil only used for The
mutashabihat.
scholars only use the
Yeah,
tafwid, right?
it's not just anybody, because ta'wil has to be based on already knowing what these verses mean, and then ta'wil is because to put context to it, so a wrong meaning won't be established. So we'll discuss a little bit of how ta'wil came into being. All right, is
So
that
with tafwid too, that's part of being able to. I don't want to say it's the same as tafsir, but it depends on whose tafsir you use, or
yeah? I just have read the statement, but the ta'wil is the tafsir.
okay, that's what I was trying to
Ta'wil is the
understand.
tafsir. Ta'wil is the tafsir. All right. All right. Okay, let me go to this next one. Where am I? Okay. All right. And so now the other one is tafweed, or which means consignment, or affirming what Allah has affirmed and negating what Allah has negated. And so, in other words, tafweed is accepting the wording just as it is and totally leaving the meaning and details to Allah alone. All right. So, when we talk about the mutashabihat verses, these are the two approaches, either ta'wil or tafweed. So, tafweed is the safest way because this is the way of the early scholars that they used to use. Just leaving as they come. They recite the verses as they came. Like if the verse says, Al-Rahman ala arsh istawa, that the Allah made istawa over the arsh, they recite that as it was and just leave it, right? And then some of the later scholars who, when they were faced with these situations where people were giving wrong meanings to these things, meaning that, saying that it meant literal, that Allah is above the throne, like in the literal sense. And even though they don't say literal, because this is one of the arguments of Wahhabis, nobody says literal, but you are alluding that if you believe that all of the word of Allah is real and literal and actual in every sense, because if you don't believe in ta'wil, you don't believe that the Quran has no verses that can be interpreted, right? So you believe that they are literal, and just because you don't say literal, you implying the meaning. So, and that means, okay, well, Allah says istawa ala arsh, and then the translation you say is above the throne, and you understand that this is a literal meaning, then you mean that Allah is literally above the throne, like in a location, right? And so
See,
this
but
is
what
what
would be the? I'm sorry to cut you off. What would be the difference between that and then some surahs where Allah starts with Alif Lam Mim, and we don't know those meanings, and we don't attempt to interpret them?
exactly. I mean, they agree on us with that. Yeah, because and even some of those things, there are explanations that they do have some like deep esoterical meanings, but that's not really known to common people, and that's not something, it's above our pay grade. We just accept that the meanings of those are really unknown, but there are explanations out there about those letters given a meaning, but the difference is because they there's some things that they can't, that you back them into a corner, they can't deny, they just can't, you can't give no real interpretation to those. But when these verses, because they believe in this, they're mujassima, giving Allah like, body parts and stuff. So, all right. So tafweed is affirming and negating what Allah is negated, and just accepting the ayahs as they come, just as they are, without any interpretation. Because one of the things that we have the contention with those Wahhabis is that when they say that they understand these attributes to be literal and real, right? In every instance, that is giving it an interpretation. They're assigning it one meaning. And this is where I think they missed the boat. And I don't know. I think some of them just don't really know, and some of them are just really deliberate, just teaching the wrong stuff in delusion, because they're following a certain methodology. And when you get deep into their methodology, it's really based on one or two scholars that they follow, like, blindly, Okay. Was that clear or?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So the next one, we said there was two approaches, which is ta'wil, interpretation, or Tawhid, a consignment, and they both had one goal. And so that one goal, as we already discussed this before, is tanzih, it's transcendence. And transcendence is completely clearing Allah from any likeness or similitude to anything. So this is the whole goal of this book, is to make sure we understand the divineness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what we're supposed to believe about him properly, you know. And that's what this whole first part of the book is about, when we're discussing his necessary attributes, what is possible, what is impossible for him, and what is necessary. All right. And so the two modes that we just mentioned, Ta'wil and Tawhid, are the only two modes that you do it. So you either accept the wording as it is and leave it totally, or you make a Ta'wil interpretation. And not you meaning like anybody, not any regular Joe. We're talking about scholars, right? All right. So here we have what Ta'wil was done by the later scholars as a necessity for clarity, because as you know, as Islam started to spread, it started to go to different civilizations who already had their own kind of beliefs, you know. And so later scholars who came after the time of the Salaf, you know, the Khalaf, you know, they had to really go into details on some issues about these things, you know, about some of these mutashabihat verses, because people were interpreting them, giving them a specific interpretation, which the mutashabihat verses, you can't give it a specific interpretation or say that it specifically means this. The best meaning, like the scholar had to explain, like the best meaning according to the context is like when Allah says certain things, it can mean power, you know, like when Allah says the yad of Allah is over their hands. So by context, that could mean, you know, that his security, his safety, his approval, right? All of them can apply, but you don't just say that one meaning specifically that means that, right? You understand? Is that clear?
Yeah.
So no one can specifically say that Ta'wil means that Allah's his trust or whatever the meaning that they applied. You just can't say that one meaning means that, but they all can apply, but you just can't say that one of them is a specific meaning, you know. So they had to make this Ta'wil, the later scholars, and some of these attributes. And that was after the time of the Salaf. Now, during the time of the Salaf, what they did was Tawhid, and it was done by the early scholars, because up until the time of Imam Malik, you know, these details weren't necessary. So does anybody remember the story of Imam Malik and the man that came to ask him about Istawa?
Yeah.
Yeah, would you mind relating it, Brother Isa?
So a man came, I think he was in the masjid, a man came and asked him about the Istawa. And the version I remember that he turned, his skin turned a certain color, you know. And then he just raised his head and he said the Istawa is known as I can't remember the wording, but he said that it's necessary to believe in it, you know, that we it's necessary to believe in it. It's known, but it's some kind of word. You mean that the Wahhabis use? You mean that it doesn't have a chain? That you mean that differs from the original wording? But then he ended up ordering the man to be kicked out of the masjid. But
yeah, so the narration, mashallah, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Good job, man. So a man had came to Imam Malik. So you know, Imam Malik died in the year 179 after the Hijri, right? So he was from the students of the companions, right? So that make him second generation. So a man had came in the masjid one time. He said that we know about Istawa. He said, how does Allah make Istawa? And a couple narration of the story that one says that Imam Malik is like, as Brother Isa said, his skin started changing. He started like sweating profusely. He's like thinking about, how am I going to answer this? Why was he thinking that? Because this is unheard of. And now you're talking about 100 or so years after the Hijrah, You know, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, that whole period of time, no one ever thought to ask that question. So, you know, he's on the spot. How am I answer this? And you know, those scholars are thinking ahead of time, not just in the immediate moment. How are people going to perceive this? So he took his time to really, you know, to be deliberate in his answer. And then he said the istawa is known, meaning that we affirm it because it's mentioned in the Quran. And the howness of this is unknown, you know. So when the man asks how, there is no how, right? And then he said to believe in it is a necessity, and to ask about it is an innovation. And then he said they had this man removed from the masjid. So up until the time of Imam Malik, there was never a discussion about this because the early scholars, they practiced Tawhid. They just accept the wording as it came, knowing that it has some type of meaning, and whatever it meant, that's you leave it to Allah, you know. And Allah, like these attributes that mutashabihat, like istawa and yad and ayn, you know, just leave it, you know. Like if you recite it, I forget one of the scholars, I used to know this in Arabic, I forgot, but it was said that, you know, the recitation is the meaning, is its tafsir, and then to remain silent of it. That's the meaning of tafweed. Reciting the verse itself. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, for Imam Malik's statement, he said to believe in the istawa is a necessity, but the how is what?
He said to ask about the how is an innovation.
Okay.
So what he was alluding to, that there is no how to it, because they understood tafweed. We accept istawa al-arsh faqat. There's no how, there's no nothing, there's no putting Allah in a place, putting him in a direction. Whatever Allah means by that, that's what we accept. In other words, we don't know what it really means, right? Because it's mutashabihat. But it's mentioned by Allah in the Quran, it's mentioned in the Sunnah. So we accept it because it's come from a divine place. But what it means, we can't even, you know, we don't go into it. And that was the meaning of the early scholars. So when Imam Malik's time came, and then, you know, this case presented itself that someone's asking about it. So now I got to answer this, meaning Imam Malik, and to make sure I get the right, you know, right meaning. All right. So tafweed was done by the early scholars where they didn't need details, you know. In our days, you know, everything ain't for everybody, you know. We don't need to know. I know we're in the age of information. Everybody acts like they have to know everything. No, we still hold on. Everything we need is not for us to know, you know. Okay. And so here it gives a good meaning of Imam Shafi'i, where he said, I leave the meaning of the verses of the attributes to Allah, and I leave the meaning of the hadith on the attributes to the messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in other words, whatever Allah intended by his names and attributes, that's what I believe. And whatever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam intended with his reports about those names and attributes, that's what I believe. I don't have to, you know, go into it. And so Imam Shafi'i was also second generation. And so before their times, that there was no discussions about these things in detail. They just accepted them as they came, you know. So is that clear?
Yes, and you mentioned a statement of his teacher, one of his teachers, Sufyan ibn Uyayna.
Yeah, that's it. Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Yeah, shukran. I used to have it memorized. I kind of know, but I don't want to mess it up because, you know, we're recording this, man. That's all they need. CD on there. Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, so Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he said that the recitation of those verses, that is the tafsir. Like there is no explanation for it. Just recite it, believe in it, and move on. You know. All right, any questions there?
No.
Okay. And so the one goal is 10Z. So I wanted to play you this clip real quick. All right. Check this out.
When we discuss Aqidah, we're right there, man. I say to any person on earth, Allah has a face. Allah has two eyes. Allah has two hands. Allah has a foot. Allah has a shin. All these are confirmed in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And while I believe that, I also believe that ليس كمثله شيء ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. There's nothing like unto him, and there's nothing and no one co-equal or comparable to him. There's nothing like Allah. We can't imagine, we can't fathom the realities of these attributes. But we don't dare ever to deny the Quran and the Sunnah. Nor do we assume that there's subliminal messages within them, because that is an immediate attack on the Quran, which Allah told us about. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. That book, there's no doubt in it.
So, wow, what do you guys think of that?
I heard that guy before.
So,
I mean, it's I mean, depending on who you are, it could be sending a mixed message.
exactly.
Who his audience is, if they don't know.
Well, the first thing he's saying, and this is the problem where they go into. So at first he said that he believed that Allah has a face, two eyes. So that means possession. And so their understanding is that Allah possesses these things, but the howness of them is what's unknown. And that's different from what we believe, that Allah says these things, and whatever they mean, we leave it to him, but we don't assign a possession, because what he's saying is basically that Allah has hands, and he believes that and how they are. And that he's saying that for people to deny a literal meaning for these mutashabihat verses is denying the Quran. This is one of the arguments that they use. So you have to listen to it closely. But this is how they play trickery with people, because if you don't know what tafweed and ta'wil is, this stuff sounds like it's not a problem for the untrained ear. You follow what I'm saying?
And he used the ayat.
Yeah, So this is what they always use after they are affirming and indicating a literal meaning. You can't do that. You just can't say, I believe Allah has a hand, but laysa kamithlihi shay, but it's not like anything we can imagine. So you saying that it's possible that Allah has a literal hand is just unimaginable.
Yeah, what I was thinking, was the translation is not revelation. So
exactly.
Can't say in English, Allah said this.
Exactly.
Say what Allah really said.
So this is where you see Tafweed comes in with those verses, and we've already learned
what Brother Isa said?
He said the translation is not revelation, So the translation that they give, it has a meaning, but that's not revelation. That's why we have to know what the revelation is, what the principles are, and what the early scholars have concluded, that you either accept these as they came without any interpretation and not alluding to a literal one before you say laysa kamithlihi shay. This is what these Wahhabis do. They'll say that, okay, Allah says it in the Quran that he has a hand, no, that's not what he says. He said that he said yad. He used the word yad, which in translation means hand. He used istawa, which in translation can mean established above the throne. But what it actually means, it can carry a number of meanings. And because of that, is one from the mutashabihat, the principles is to leave them as they come and follow the earlier salaf. And the principle of the khalaf is to interpret in the meaning that is befitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And literal attributes of hands and stuff like that are not befitting to Allah. So, and because they have taken a route of following people who have adapted these blunderous ideas, and with the petrodollar influx, people think that Ahl Sunnah, what they've established for 1,000 years, is the wrong way. And this is the stuff we have to counter, and especially the area that we live in this Northeast region. We're surrounded by these people, but we ain't throwing up no white flags and coming out with our hands up neither. We scrapping.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, But this is an example I wanted to show you. There was another one that has a couple people in the video. I think he's one and the other people, but it was kind of like mocking them a little bit, but giving some excerpts of some of these things that, you know, one guy from New Zealand said, do you believe that Allah has a shin? You know, Allah has a beautiful shin. We just don't know how it is. You know, and then another belief that some, you know, some more prominent ones amongst them that says that every, and they got this from somewhere, they believe that any attribute that's considered perfection for mankind, that Allah is more worthy of it. And so, in other words, that if 2 eyes are perfection for mankind, then Allah is more worthy of having 2 eyes. And he said on his video that he believed Allah has 2 eyes, even in the description with the click thing. And there is no established tradition that Allah has 2 eyes. They say Allah has 2 eyes. They've said Allah has 2 hands, and then they say he has 2 right hands, right? 1 shin, and then when they go deep into this, because when they go down this rabbit hole, they get stuck. And then instead of just using what the Salaf use, whatever Allah means by these, we leave it and, you know, giving it a proper meaning. Then they say we only say what Allah says, and whatever he doesn't say, we also don't, you know, we don't say it neither, or we don't deny it. And then you have some of these people saying that they don't deny that Allah has a form. When you start looking at the ugly beliefs and comparing it to Ahl Sunnah, you know, then you see why some people are so hard on them, because this stuff is unbefitting of the Lord of everything in existence. Because if they believe that, then they saying, okay, so Allah has 2 eyes, he has a face, according to them. Then they say he doesn't have any facial features except the eyes, because he doesn't mention the nose. He doesn't have a head, because he doesn't mention the head. He has 2 right hands. You know, he doesn't have a left hand, 1 shin, and 2 feet. And you imagine in your mind that these things are real.
Like an alien.
Yeah, you worshiping an alien. Or extraterrestrial, or some type of, you know, something. And Imam Ghazali said that a person cannot really believe until they know what it is they're worshiping. You have to know who Allah is, and you know who Allah is by what he's not. That he's not, you know, it's not befitting for him to be attributed to these things, because then it becomes problematic. So then when they establish themselves to believe in these things as literal and true, then they say, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the hearts of the believer are between the 2 fingers of Ar-Rahman. So they believe in Allah has 2 fingers. And by their logic, if Allah only mentions 2 fingers and he doesn't mention 5 fingers, so they believe that he has a hand with 2 fingers on it. What is this? But they'll never admit to that. They'll try to hide behind Laysa Kamithlihi Shay. You cannot establish these literal meanings for Allah's attributes and believing that this is the only meaning that's applied, and then just say, I totally believe it's unlike anything. You know. So I just want to show you guys that.
They would be one of the ones in this day and age that Imam Malik would throw out of the masjid.
Oh man, in this day and age, yeah. Now they would have got put in jail with the Khalif, like they did some of them already for these views. No, you going to jail, buddy. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, line 41. So he says, وَتَنْزِهِ الْقُرْآنَ أَيْ كَلَامَهِ أَنِ الْحُدُوثِ وَحْدَرِ انْتِقَامَهِ. So absolve Tanzih, the Quran, meaning his speech, from any type of origination, and beware of his vengeance. All right. So line 41 is basically, this is a refutation of the Mu'tazila. So there's a response to the Mu'tazila, the old argument, and they held the view that it was impossible for Allah to have speech, because speech by definition requires letters, sounds, and sequence. And all of these are qualities of creation. So they rejected that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his speech is eternal, and and hence they used to have this whole thing about the creation of the Quran. You know, they believed that the Quran was created, and that whoever didn't believe the same thing, they were put in jail or even killed, persecuted. And so we know about the big test of one of the great scholars who have endured this hardship just because he would not go against this. He wouldn't go against. He would constantly refute this. Anybody know who scholar that was?
Wait, what did you say?
The scholar who stood up for the Ahl Sunnah and declaring that of the Quran was uncreated.
Imam Ahmed.
Yeah, Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah. And what was that called? The whole thing with Imam Ahmed, the whole ordeal. Anybody know a name to it? It was called the mihna, or the exam. The mihna means like an exam or the test or the trial of Imam Ahmed of, standing up through, I think he lived through like 5 other the Mu'tazilite Khalifas, right? And I think like the 5th one, they kind of like had mercy. And I remember reading a story that it was, they said the way they had the jail, like Imam Ahmed could have like left. Like they used to take the shackles off of him. Like it wasn't like he was behind bars. You know what I mean? They just had him in confinement, but they say he could have like really walked away. You know what I'm saying? And but he did, huh? Say it again.
That was interesting.
Yeah, so I remember reading this like that. He could have actually like he stood the ground because I'm sure he wasn't just going to be on like a fugitive, because then they would have really killed him. But he stood the trials. I mean, they beat him every time he stood up for it, and like would give him a chance and be like, "What do you say? The Allah is the uncreated word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." They would beat him. He stayed in jail, and so when you look at Imam Ahmad's life, he was a champion for Ahl Sunnah, and so. But this line here is in response to the people that the Mu'tazila, that they held the Quran, because speech, what we're speaking now, is created. So here is the belief of Ahl Sunnah, that the recited and written Quran is a reflection of the eternal speech of Allah, and that is created. But eternal speech, Allah's speech, the Kalam of Allah, has eternal meanings, and that is uncreated. So that's a simple way to understand it. So for instance, the Mu'tazila, and if you don't know these arguments, and just imagine back then, it would make sense, okay, speech is sound, word, and letters in sequence. So that's something that has a beginning. So how can Allah have eternal speech? So these are some of the things that he used to answer, and later scholars like Imam Ahmed were exposed to this kind of stuff. So they had to answer it in the right way. So this is what we believe, that the Quran that we have and that we recite and that we write and in the book form, these things are created, right? The sounds that when we're reciting the Quran, these things are created. But Allah's eternal speech that's reflected in those created things is uncreated. Is that clear?
Very clear.
Yes.
And yeah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten the grave of Imam Ahmed, because he endured all this just so we can have this simple explanation today. And even for some people, they is problematic even today. May Allah protect us from any kind of doubts. And so line 42, this will be the last one for today. And so line 42 says, وَكُلُّ نَسٍ لِلْحُدُوثِ دَلَّ إِحْمَلْ عَلَى اللَّفْظِ الَّذِي قَدْ دَلَّ. He said, any text that indicates origination, interpret it as the uttered word that is being indicated. So this is a continuation of the line 41 and 42. They kind of go together. So here is what it means, inshallah. So there are two types of other words, right? You have the kalamul nafsi. Kalamul nafsi is the pre-eternal attribute of the essence. So this is what's uncreated. So it's an explanation of what we just said before, that this is the kalam that's with Allah himself. And that kalam, which when it's revealed, it turns into words, letters, and sounds. But that meaning with Allah is the pre-eternal attribute of the essence. The pre-eternal attribute of the essence. And then there's kalamul lafdi, the verbal speech, or the other words, uttered words. And that is what we have when we recite the Quran and we write the Quran as in a book. That lafdi, the utterance, is what's created. All right. And so here is a summarization of the meaning. What the Quran is defined as the words revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the shortest word of which is a miracle that no person is capable of replicating. The recitation is a type of worship and which is revealed by Allah in word and some meaning. So, and what they mean here is that revealed Allah in words and a speech in a sequence that we understand, and some of the meanings from the divine meaning is indicated in the Quran. So, you know, the Quran has meanings that are very deep, very profound. I mean, that's why we believe in it, because we know it's unlike any other thing. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was, you know, it couldn't be matched. They've been challenged to produce one word, produce 10 words, you know, produce anything like it if you can. They can't do it. And in that revelation is some of the, you know, divine meanings, but not all of them, you know, not all of them. So, you know, the Quran is a remarkable type of book that, you know, is sent down for guidance and instruction, for laws, living, and most of all, to give an indication to know who the one we're worshiping, you know. All right, any questions on that?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, so that's we'll stop there, and inshallah, we'll resume for next week. We'll start from line 43 onwards.
Wait, can you put that last slide back up? I just want to screenshot it. Sorry.
Okay. Hold on. Okay. This one here? That's the one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it, right?
Yes.
All right. Screenshot, you the inside woman. You know, you love me.
Hush.
Okay. All right. You got it?
Yes.
Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, so inshallah, this you know, that line 40 was pretty good. I mean, it's stuff that we minded, but just to know, you know, this kind of stuff that we have to counter, because it's very common, like where we live at, the people, you know, that they're saying that they believe in these words as they are, but they already attribute a literal meaning to verses that are mutashabihat. And we already discussed that all of the verses that talks about Allah's attributes of, you know, hearing, seeing, all of these are mutashabihat. You know, istawa and yad and ayn and wajh and sak, and all of those verses, they're all mutashabihat, meaning that they can carry a multitude of meanings, and you just can't assign one meaning. And this is the difference between us and, you know, the Wahhabis. They assign one meaning and saying that the real literal meaning is the only meaning, and that if you interpret it, then that you're denying Allah's word, or you're changing it or distorting it. And that's not what it means, you know. And that's sometimes a discussion that we need to have with them, you know. And we hopefully will open up some dialogue for some of them, because, you know, they constantly take shots at Asharis and Maturidis, and we do the same as well, you know. But a healthy dialogue is one of the things that they don't want to do, like having it in the open. And so let the people decide, you know, not let them decide, but let them see what the differences are. You know, have trust in regular people that they can comprehend. And if they don't understand something, you know, they know how to ask. You know, they don't want people to know that they, you know, taken this wrong turn in Akida, you know. and some of the claims that are made against them from us, about, this is why we don't believe that, because it's not the way of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's the way of what's been given to you and you passing it off, like that. So, and in this Delaware Valley area, we're surrounded with this stuff that we often have to counter, So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us firm in the proper belief. Amen. All right, so if there are no questions or anything, comments, we're in. Nobody has anything?
No.
Okay, inshallah. All right, so we'll stop there and we'll conclude we'll resume next week, inshallah. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.